Welcome viewers to Theek TV. Today I introduce you to a new segment known as the class of science. In the class of science, we are going to discuss issues related to science, and this topic will be essential or important to any person who wish to follow up on the matter relating to science, especially students. Today, we are going to start by discussing the plant section. Here we want to know more about plants. Now, plants are fascinating organisms and a crucial part of Earth's ecosystem. If you look at the Earth ecosystem, comprises of majorly plants. So plants make up a crucial part of Earth's ecosystem. Plants belong to the kingdom Plantae and perform essential functions like photosynthesis. As photosynthesis, this is a process that takes place in green plants, and this process involves conversion of light energy into chemical energy stored in the form of sugars. So in photosynthesis takes place in two stages that we'll discuss later. And just to mention, these stages are the light stage or light dependent stage and the dark stage, that is light independent stage. Now during this process, or in this process, we are talking about photosynthesis here. This process not only nourishes the plant, but also releases oxygen, which is vital for most life on Earth. And remember, this oxygen is released during the first stage of photosynthesis, the light-dependent stage, where light is used to break water molecules to oxygen and hydrogen atom. And the second stage is the dark stage, where there is a manufacture of food or sugar, where hydrogen from light stage combine with the carbon dioxide in the process of carbon dioxide fixation to manufacture food. So that is entirely what photosynthesis simply entails. So if you can look at that, the pictures or the previews of the green plants, here we have the bean plant there, the Physalis vulgaris, a scientific name. We have the guava plant, you have the maize plant, and you have napier grass. Those are green plants. Those green plants are able to carry out photosynthesis since they have a green coloring matter. Now, what are the key features of these plants? What are the key features of plants? One, we talk on the basis of photosynthesis, one of the key features of plants. And plants use chlorophyll. So, a green pigment. Chlorophyll is a green pigment in plants, especially the green plants. This green pigment absorbs or attracts or captures sunlight. And this happens mainly in the chloroplast of their cells. If we look at the structure of a cell, the structure of a cell has got what we call our plant cell has got chlorophyll molecules, has got chloroplast. Chloroplast contain chlorophyll molecules. And this chlorophyll molecule absorb light energy. This light energy is used to break water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen atom. Now, oxygen produced during this process is given out as a byproduct. So that oxygen is essential to other living organisms in the ecosystem. While some of the oxygen are retained to be used in the process of respiration, since these plants also requires energy for growth and development. Now, the hydrogen produced in the first stage, which is the light dependent stage, is used in the dark stage, where it combines with the carbon dioxide to form a simple sugar or glucose. And this water, how do plants get water? They absorb water from the soil. using the roots. So that is one a key feature in plant that we'll discuss more in details. Now if you can see the formula, that is carbon dioxide plus water plus light energy, you get simple sugars, and oxygen is produced in that process. 2, we're going to talk about reproduction in plants. Plants can reproduce both sexually, that is through seeds or spores, and asexually via cuttings, runners, or buddings. So flowering plants, i.e. the angiosperms, reproduce using flowers where pollination leads to seed formation. So in a section of reproduction, asexual reproduction leads to formation of seeds, where flowering plants reproduce by means of pollination. And remember, in pollination here, we are going to discuss about the 2 types of pollination, that is the cross-pollination and self-pollination. But in the case of asexual reproduction is where there is no seed formed, since the reproduction involves budding, or the budding type of production. We have the cuttings and the runners. You can see these are the simple pictures to illustrate the reproduction. The fruits like the tomato are as a result of the reproduction, that is self-pollination. That is the maize fruit there, that is also as a result of a certain mechanism or a certain fertilization through what we call pollination. Now we have a feature number 3, that is adaptation. So adaptations. Now in this feature, we look at how plants are evolved to survive in different environments. So plants have evolved. How are they evolved to survive, or which features do they have that enable them to survive in a diverse environments? For example, if you look at the cacti has got what we call, or they have what we call thick stems to store water and spines to reduce water loss. While aquatic plants, these are plants that grow in water. Aquatic plants like water lilies have wide leaves to float on water surface. And remember, these plants that grow in water, they have wide leaves to enable them lose excess water to environment. They are able to lose excess water to the environment. So you have the photograph here for the cacti. It has very thick stem. So that thick stem is to store water, since it grow in dry land. We have the maize there. The maize here grows in terrestrial land. So this can dictate the type of environment the plant grows. The commonly types of environment here, we talk about the desert or the semi-arid environment, where you will find most of the cactus. We have the maize plant here in terrestrial environment, the normal environment here. Then you have water lily. These are the hydrophytes that grow in water. Hydrophytes that grow in water. We also have other type of environment, that is the halophytes. Those are plants that grow in salty area. Another feature here, we are going to look at what we call the roots and the leaves. So we're going to look at what is the main of the roots and the main function of the roots and the leaves. Roots anchor plants and absorb water and nutrients from the soil. So to anchor means to provide support. So you realize that roots hold plant family in the soil that provide support. We have the leaves for photosynthetic functions. Leaves are exposed to the atmosphere to carry out photosynthesis. Then we have roots also absorb water from the soils. They absorb water and nutrients from the soils. Leaves, we say that leaves, the main function of leaves is photosynthesis. So leaves are there for photosynthetic function. Feature number 5 here, we talk about plant hormones. The plant hormones. So hormones play a very vital role in development of plant. So plants regulate their growth and responses to the environment through hormones like auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, and abscisic acid. So these hormones facilitate the growth in plants. Also, these hormones facilitate what we call response. Despite that they are plants, they are living. Therefore, they also respond to the changes in the environment. Respond to the changes in the environment. Now, that's an overview about plants. Now, how are these plants classified? How can we classify plants? So let's look at the classification of plants. The classification of plants is a hierarchical system used to organize and group plants based on their shared characteristics. That is a hierarchy that organizes plants and group based on their shared characteristics, evolutionary history, and genetic relationships. So in this classification, we are going to talk about how do we group these plants. We group these plants based on their common features, their common characteristics, their evolutionary relationship, and their genetic relationship. Now, the main taxonomic rank are kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species in that order. So kingdom is the largest taxonomic unit, followed by phylum, or phylum, that is phylum in plants, and division in animals, while species is the smallest taxonomic unit, just below the genus. So plants are broadly classified into major groups based on key traits such as the presence or absence of vascular tissue, seeds, and flowers. So the major features we are going to look at when classifying these plants is the absence or presence of one, vascular tissues. Of course, we have plants that have got the vascular tissues. The vascular tissues here, we're talking about the xylem and the phloem. We have seeds, we have the seed-bearing plants, and we have plants that does not bear seeds. We have the flowers, so we have the flowering plants and non-flowering plants. Those are the major features we are going to base when classifying these plants into their respective groups. Now, let's look at the breakdown of that classification. Now, plants belongs to kingdom Plantae, and belongs to kingdom Plantae. Phylum or plants belongs to kingdom Plantae. Phylum. So plants belongs to kingdom Plantae. From kingdom Plantae, we classify these plants further into divisions. And we have several divisions. We start by discussing the first division. The first division here is Bryophyta, the Bryophytes. Bryophyta, these are plants that lack vascular system, or we can also say non-vascular plants. They do not have vascular system. They lack specialized tissue that transport water and mineral salts and manufactured food. So these plants lack specialized tissues for transporting water and nutrients. So the specialized tissues we are talking about here is a xylem and phloem. Remember, the function of the vascular tissue is xylem transport or conduct water and mineral salts, while phloem translocate manufactured food from the leaf to the photosynthetic from the leaf to other parts of the plant, while xylem conduct water and mineral salts from the roots to other parts of the plants into the photosynthetic cells. They are typically small and found in moist environments since they rely on diffusion to move water. Most of these plants, they are smaller and found in moist environments. Most of the bryophytes, they are found in moist environments since they rely on diffusion to move faster. Now, what are the major characteristics of these bryophytes? Do not have true roots, stems, or leaves. They doesn't have the true roots. They reproduce via spores and no seed is formed. Example of such plants here, we have what we call the mosses. Mosses, that is the bryophyta. We have the liverworts, is also under the division bryophyta. We have the hornworts, also Anthesceratophyta, which is also a branch of Bryophyta. So you can see the pictures, the photographs there. We have the moss, this you have the liverwort, and you have the hornwort. So the environment can also dictate where they grow. They grow in water area or in moist environment. Two, we have what's called the vascular plants or the tracheophytes. These are the vascular plants. Vascular plants, these are plants that have vascular tissues. These plants have vascular tissues. The vascular tissues here, we are talking about the xylem and the phloem, to transport water, nutrients, and food throughout the plants. So the function of this vascular tissue is transport water and mineral salts, transport food from the photosynthetic cells to other parts of the plant. They are further divided into seedless and seed producing plants. So these vascular plants, they are further divided into seed producing and seedless plants. So seedless means plants that does not produce seeds. Then you have seed producing plants. Those are plants that they produce seed. Now, seedless vascular plants, these plants reproduce via spores rather than seeds. So they reproduce by a means of spores. Reproduction is by sporulation. So they produce via means of spores, and that's why there is no seed formed. They have true roots, stems, and leaves. They have true roots, stems, and leaves. Example of such plants here, we talk about the ferns. A fern is a pteridophyta. We have the hostels, the Ixitophyta, then we have the club mosses. So these are the pictures of the hostels. So here there's a hostel picture there. These are seedless plants. They don't produce seeds. That means that reproduction is by spores. They don't produce seed. An example here, we have the hostels, we have the fern, and we have the club mosses. Seed producing plants, the spermatophytes. Seed producing plants. These plants reproduce using seeds, which contain the embryo and a food, supply encased in a protective covering. So these plants, they are seed producing plants. They produce a seed. Now, if they produce a seed, then they have a defined system of reproduction. They reproduce by self-pollination. So they contain the embryo and a food supply, embryo and a food supply or encased in a protective covering. Seed plants are further divided into two major groups. We have the gymnosperms and the angiosperms. So let's look at these gymnosperms. What are these? The gymnosperms simply means the naked seed plants. What does that mean? The seeds of these plants are not enclosed. The seeds are open. Gymnosperm produce seeds that are not enclosed within an ovary. And that's why we say that the naked seed plants, their seeds are not enclosed within an ovary. They typically have cones instead of flowers for reproduction. They have cones instead of flowers for reproduction. What are the characteristics or main characteristics of this particular gymnosperms? Do not produce flower. So they don't produce flower. Their flower is the exposure of the seeds outside. So they have cones. So that cones is the one that act like flower. So the cones, they have cones instead of flowers. So they don't produce flowers. Seeds are often formed in cones. Seeds are often formed in cones. Those are the two major characteristics of the gymnosperms. Example of the gymnosperms here, we have the conifers or the coniferous. Where the coniferous here, we talk about the pine, the spruce, the fir. We also classify as the phylum Coniferophyta. The cicads here, we have the Cicadophyta, gingos, the Gingophyta, then Gintophyta. Those are a good example of the gymnosperms. You can see the pictures below. The conifers, the seeds are in cones. See, the seeds are in cones, or the seeds are exposed, the naked seeds. We have the cicad here. You have the Ginkgo biloba. Then you have the Genitophyte. And number 4, we have what called the angiosperms. The angiosperms are the flowering plants. So when somebody mentions the angiosperms, what should come in your mind is the flowering plants. These are the plants that bear flowers. The angiosperms are the most diverse and widespread group of plants. They produce flowers, and their seeds are enclosed within a fruit. This type of plants, one of the major features that identify them: 1, they produce flowers. 2, their seeds are enclosed within a fruit. For example, if you look at a good example here, maybe look at mango. A mango fruit, its seed is enclosed inside that fruit. The seed is enclosed inside the fruit. Characteristics. What are the major 2 characteristics of these flowering plants? They produce flowers, which facilitate reproduction. 2, seeds are enclosed within a fruit. Seeds are enclosed within a fruit. Those are the 2 major characteristics that distinguishes these angiosperms from gymnosperms. The seeds are enclosed within a fruit. They produce flowers, which facilitate reproduction. Now, angiosperms are divided into 2 major classes. Here we talk about the monocots and the dicots. So an example of a monocot here, you can see you have the maize as a good example of a monocot. In that order, you have the bean is a good example of a dicot. So the features, let's look at the monocot. Let's talk something about this monocot, the monocotyledon. So monocotyledons are the plants. Monocotyledonae is a class. Now, these plants have 1 seed leaf, the cotyledon. That means that it has 1 cotyledon. For example, you can if you look at the structure of a growing seedling of a maize, you realize that it only has one cotyledon. What are the characteristics, the major characteristics of monocots? Number one, parallel leaf veins. Two, we have flower parts in multiples of 3. The flower parts in multiples of 3. Number 3, we have fibrous root system. The good example here, if you look at the maize and other monocots, you realize that they have fibrous root system. So good example for this monocots, you have the grasses. If you look at the grasses, you have the lilies, you have the orchids and the palms. They don't have taproots, they have fibrous root system. Flower parts are in multiples of 3. Then the parallel leaf veins, they have parallel leaf veins, or the venation is parallel. Dicots or dicotyledons, class Dicotyledonae. These plants have 2 seed leaves. So that means that they have 2 cotyledons. For example, in a growing seedling of a bean, it divides into 2 cotyledons. Characteristics: net-like leaf veins. If you look at the structure of a bean plant there, if you look at that leaf, it is leaf vein, the net-like leaf vein. Flower parts in multiples of 4 or 5. Then they have taproot system. Those are the major features that identifies the dicots from the monocots. Example of dicots, here you have the roses, the sunflowers, the oaks, and the maples and beans, and very many. You can check that. You have the dicot here, and you have the monocot. Now, how can you summarize this? In classification of plants, plants are classified into kingdom. That is kingdom Plantae. These plants are further sub-classified into divisions. You have 3 major divisions. You have the Bryophytes, we have the Pteridophytes, we have the Spermophytes. And we say that the Bryophytes are non-vascular plants. The Bryophytes are non-vascular plants. You have the vascular plants, which are the seedless vascular plants, and which are the seedless vascular plants. In this case, we can say pteridophytes. The pteridophytes are the seedless vascular plants. Then you have the vascular plants, which are the spermophytes. The vascular plants, which are the spermophytes. Which are the spermophytes. The spermophyte is further, or the seed-bearing plants are further divided into 2: the gymnosperms, which include the conifers, the sickles, and the gingos. We have the angiosperm, which includes the flowering plant, which includes what called flowering plants. The angiosperm is further divided into 2 classes: the monocots and dicots. That's the monocotyledonae and dicotyledonae. Monocotyledonae comprises of the grasses, lilies, orchids, maize plants, and very more. And dicotyledonae comprises of the roses, sunflowers, maples. This classification system allows scientists to do what? If you analyze, if you want to be a scientist, maybe you want to be a botanist, you have to analyze these plants. Okay. That is a classification of plants. Now, general characteristics of plants. What are some of the general characteristics of these plants? Plants, as members of the kingdom Plantae share several defining characteristics that distinguishes them from other organisms. So what distinguishes plants from other organisms? One, multicellular eukaryotes. So multicellular, this means these plants have very many cells. They have very many cells, so they are multicellular organism. They are made up of many cells. Their cells are eukaryotic, which means they have a true nucleus and specialized organelles like mitochondria and chloroplast. And these cells are enclosed within a membrane. And that's why I say they are eukaryotic. The cell content is enclosed with a nuclear membrane, or the nuclear content is enclosed with a nuclear membrane. So they are eukaryotic. The nuclear content is enclosed with by a nuclear membrane. Two, a feature that identifies plants from other organisms, or autotrophic nutrition. They are autotrophs. Most plants are autotrophs. They produce their own food through photosynthesis. They are able to manufacture their own food through photosynthesis. They use chlorophyll, a green pigment in chloroplast, to capture sunlight and convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose. And this glucose is a form of sugar, and in that process oxygen is produced. This process not only provides energy for the plant but also produces oxygen. Oxygen is essential for life on earth. All other living depend on that oxygen. So that also means that plants play a vital role in the environment. Plants play a vital role in the environment. Cell walls made of cellulose. So the structure of the cell, of a plant cell, the structure of a plant cell is made up of a cell wall or cell wall. This cell wall has got what called, or this cell wall is made up of cellulose. That's one major feature that identify a plant from other organisms. For example, a plant and animal. Plant cell has got a cell wall made up of cellulose, unlike an animal cell. Plant cells are surrounded by rigid cell walls composed mainly of cellulose, a complex carbohydrate that gives plants structure and strength. And it also gives the plant cell its shape. This cell wall helps plant maintain their shape and provide support, especially in non-woody plants. Plants also shows alternation of generation. These are a life cycle. A plant exhibit a life cycle. This life cycle is the one that we call alternation of generations, which includes two phases, the gametophyte and sporophyte stages. The gametophyte is the haploid stage containing one set of chromosome which produces gametes, that is the sperm and the egg cell, while the sporophyte is the diploid or the diploid stage containing two sets of chromosomes which produces spores that develop into new gametophytes. Gametophytes. 5. Another feature is reproduction, and in plants we talk about the two types of reproduction that we'll discuss in detail later. We have the sexual and asexual types of reproduction. Plants reproduce through both sexual and asexual means. Sexual reproduction typically involves the production of male and female gametes, e.g., you have pollen and ovules that unite to form seeds. Asexual reproduction occurs through methods such as vegetative propagation, e.g. cuttings, tubers, and runners. We have other sexual production. We have what called the spore formation or sporulation. We have the sporulation. We have other asexual production like budding. But basically in plants here, we'll talk about the cuttings, the tubers, and the runners, and the spore formation, where new plants are produced without the need for seeds. That type of reproduction is known as asexual reproduction. 6. Non-motile. Plants are non-motile or stationary. They are stationary, but there is a way on how they compensate on that. We'll discuss about that. So these plants are motile. That means that when you planted a plant at a certain region, you don't expect after 1 week that plant is growing from another region. So this plant is motile. It does not move. There's a way how it responds to that, or it compensates to movement. We look at that. Now, unlike animals, plants are generally non-motile, meaning they remain fixed in one location throughout their lives. However, some plants show movements such as tropisms, that is growth toward or away from stimuli like light or gravity, and that's how plants respond to movement. They also respond to movement by what we call pollination, through pollination, where a species of that particular the same species of that particular plants may pollinate and grow to a certain region away from the parent plant. 7. How the vascular and non-vascular plants. So plants are divided into vascular and non-vascular groups based on the presence or absence of specialized tissue for transporting water, nutrients, and food. So the plants is also a feature that identifies the plants from other organisms. So we said that vascular plants, e.g. ferns, coniferous, and flowering plants, have xylem and phloem tissue for transporting water and nutrients, while non-vascular plants, e.g. have mosses and liverworts, they lack these tissues and rely on diffusion for transporting substance, or for transport of substances. Growth from meristems. Another feature or characteristic of plant, or another feature of plant, we have growth from meristem. Plants grow from regions of undifferentiated cells called the meristems. The apical meristems are the tip of root and shoots allow plant to grow in length, while lateral meristems allow for an increase in girth in wood and plants. So plants, unlike the other living organism, they experience growth in the entire life of that particular plant due to that presence of apical meristem, where there's an increase in the at the tip of the root and increase at the shoot. So that allows plant to grow, to increase in length, while we have what called the lateral meristem, which allow the plant to increase in the girth in woody plants. We have the cuticle and the stomata. Plants have a waxy layer called the cuticle on their leaves and stems, which helps reduce water loss. That thickness and the thickness of this plant depend on the environment where the plant grows. The plants that grow in dry land or semi-arid land or desert, they have very thick cuticle. Plants that grow in hydrophytes, they have very thin cuticle, so that to allow that plant to lose that excess water, while those that grows in areas that experience very little rain, like the deserts, they have thick cuticle to store more water. They also possess stomata. Plants also possess stomata. These are small openings on the underside of leaves that regulate gas exchange, that is the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, and water vapor through transpiration. and water vapor through transpiration. So that is the function of the stomata. We have adaptation to environment. One of the feature of plants, we look at the adaptation to the environment. How are these plants adapted to the environment? We'll discuss that in detail. So plants have evolved a wide range of adaptations to survive in different environments. Example here include the cacti with thickened stem for water storage in deserts. So that thickness is an adaptation to cactus to help them survive in that in a desert environment. You have the aquatic plants with the floating leaves, very broad leaf lamina for photosynthesis on water surface, and also for transpiration to lose excess water. We have the deciduous trees that shed their leaves in autumn to conserve water during winter months. The deciduous trees, so they shed their leaves to conserve water. So you realize that this deciduous trees, it comes at a time maybe during the dry season. You realize that they shed their leaves. The purpose of shedding the leaves is to conserve water, to minimize the rate of transpiration. Number 11, talk about the storage of energy. Plants store excess energy in the form of starch, a polysaccharide that can be broken down for energy when needed, such as during periods of low light or dormancy. So in this, plants, that excess energy produced during the process of photosynthesis, it is stored in form of starch, and starch is a polysaccharide that can be broken down for energy when needed, such as during period of low light or dominance. Now, just like we discussed on we viewed something on photosynthesis. During photosynthesis, there's what we call the chlorophyll molecules absorb light energy. This light energy is used to break water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen atoms. So in that process, energy is also stored in the form of ATP. The ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is a compound that stores energy. So this energy is released according to how it is needed in the plant tissues. So during dark stage, where carbon dioxide combines with hydrogen, the process of carbon dioxide fixation, energy is needed during the process of sugar formation or simple carbohydrate formation. Let's discuss now. Plants are incredibly diverse, from tiny mosses to giant cyclian trees, and they play a vital role in supporting life on Earth by providing oxygen, food, and habitat for countless organisms. Now, you can picture out what happened during the dry season. You realize that during the dry season in the country, there is no food. There's no food. Why? Because plants are sources of food. Living things does not manufacture food. Plants are the manufacturer of food. Plants manufacture food. When you go and buy maybe that unga, buy that maize flour, what is the source of the maize flour? The source of the maize flour is from plants. Assuming there is no maize plant, what will happen? There will be no that maize flour or that ugali. So plants play very major role in living in the environment or in the ecosystem. So other sources even those juices, the juices are as a result of the fruits. So if there's no fruit bearing plants, that means that some important substances will also be absent. So plants are incredibly diverse, from tiny mosses to giant trees, and they play a vital role in supporting life on Earth by providing oxygen, food, and habitat for countless organisms. We build houses using the tree. The roofs are built using the trees. So this tree play a very vital role. Now, let's now look at another the subdivision. The first subdivision, Bryophyta, or the Bryophytes. These are now non-vascular plants. Now let's discuss this in detail. The Bryophytes are a group of non-vascular plants that lack specialized tissues. So they are non-vascular. Non-vascular means they lack specialized tissues, that is the xylem and phloem, for transporting water and nutrients. These plants are simple in structure and primarily live in most environments. They include mosses, liverworts, and hornworts. These plants, they don't have vascular bundles, and as we said, these are the feature that identifies the bryophytes, the major feature that identify the bryophyte. Now, what are some of the features of the bryophytes? Number one, lack of vascular tissue. We discussed about that. Two, simple structure. They have no true roots, stems, or leaves. Instead, they have rhizoids. What functions like roots in the bryophytes are the rhizoids? So rhizoids are root-like structures that anchor. To anchor means to provide support or to hold that plant firmly. So they anchor the plant but do not absorb water or nutrients like true roots. They provide support but they don't absorb water or nutrients like true roots. Another structure of this plant, we have the thallus, the body of the plant, which may be leafy or flat and ribbon-like, the thallus. This is a structure that represents the leaf, but it is not called the leaf, it is called the thallus. It's the body of the plant which may be leafy or flat and ribbon-like. Mosses have small, simple leaf-like structures, while liverworts and horns have thalloid, or the flattened body. You can see the mosses here, the structure of the mosses, leaf-like structures, and you have the flattened body here. That is the liverworts and the hornworts. That is their structure appearance. Feature number 3, dependence on moist environments. So this plant, they depend on moist environment. The plant depend on moist environment. Now, number 3, dependency on moist environment. Bryophytes thrive in damp, shaded habitats because they depend on water for production and nutrient absorption. Since most of these plants, they don't have true roots. So due to lack of vascular bundles or vascular tissues and the true roots, they rely on external water sources for their hydration. 4, have reproduction via spores. Bryophytes reproduce through spores, so no seed or not seeds. So they have an alternation of generation life cycle. So the means of reproduction is by sporulation, so that they reproduce through spores. Therefore, there is no seed formed. The gametophytes generation, which is the haploid, is the dominant stage, meaning this is the main plant body, is the main plant body. The sporophyte generation, which is the diploid, is dependent on the gametophyte and produces spores in a capsule, the so-called sporangium. The sporangium. Water is necessary for fertilization. In this case, water is necessary for fertilization, as sperm must swim through water to reach the egg. Sperm must swim through water to reach the egg. Alternation of generation. Gametophyte, which is the dominant phase, produces male and female sex organs. Antheridia, male productive structure that produces sperm. Achegonia, female productive structure that produces eggs. So this is the body parts that coordinates to make sure that reproduction takes place in plants, where that is through the alternation of generation, where the gametophyte is the dominant phase producing male and female sex organs, and this gametophyte, it has the antheridia, which is the male reproductive structure that produces sperm. Achegonia, which is the female reproductive structure that produces the eggs. Sporophyte, the dependent phase, forms after fertilization and remains attached to the gametophyte. It produces spores in the sporangium for dispersal. Size. Here we talk about size. The small size. Bryophytes are generally small and low growing. They grow lower on the ground. They are smaller, often forming dense mats on moist surface such as soil, rocks, or tree trunks. 7. No cuticle or stomata in most bryophytes. Most bryophytes lack a thick cuticle or waxy layer and stomata, which in vascular plants help reduce water loss. This makes them highly susceptible to dry out, hence their preference for humid environments. And that feature makes them survive better in wet areas, or moist areas, since they lack cuticle or stomata. Now, what is the ecological need or ecological role of these plants? One, we have what called the water retention. Bryophytes can absorb and hold large amount of water, helping to maintain moisture in the ecosystem where they grow. So they help in what called water retention due to their capacity to hold more water. Pioneer species, they are often the first plant to colonize bare or disturbed environments, e.g. after a volcanic eruption, where they help form soil for other plants. Now let's look at advantage of bryophytes. What are some of the advantages of these bryophytes? The seedless plants. One, ability to grow in harsh, moist environment. They have that ability they can grow in harsh, moist environments. Bryophytes can thrive in environments where other plants may struggle, such as rocks, logs, and bare soil. They can survive in areas within minimal soil and even tolerate poor soil conditions. 2. Water retention capabilities. Bryophytes help retain moisture in their environment, creating a microhabitat for other organisms like small insects, fungi, and other plants, since they are able to hold water, so that water can be used by other organisms. Mosses, in particular, can absorb and store large amount of water, which is beneficial for preventing soil erosions and maintaining wetland ecosystem. And that's why when you go to the areas inhabited by bryophytes, even if there is there have been a period of drought, you realize that that area is still moist due to their capability to hold more water. Pioneer in succession, bryophytes are among the first organisms to colonize bare or disturbed land. breaking down rocks and accumulating organic materials. They contribute to soil formation, making the area habitable for other plants. Then we also have low nutritional requirements. So this type of plants can grow in nutrient poor environments since they have very low nutritional requirements. So they can grow in a poor nutrient environment where vascular plants will struggle since they absorb water and nutrients directly from the soil from their soil. The indicator species, because they are highly sensitive to air pollution, bryophytes, especially the mosses, are used as bioindicators to monitor the health of ecosystem, particularly for measuring air and water quality. So they are used as an indicator species. They are able to dictate the type of soil, the environment of that particular region, due to its characteristic to absorb water and other factors. Disadvantages of bryophytes: one, dependency on water for reproduction. So that means that this species cannot reproduce without water, so they depend on water. Bryophytes rely on water for fertilization since their sperm must swim to the egg. This dependency on moist environment limits the ability to live in dry or arid region. That means that they cannot survive where there is no water. They cannot reproduce. Lack of vascular tissues. Without xylem and phloem, bryophytes cannot transport water and nutrients over a long distance, which restricts their growth. As a result, they remain small and close to the ground. Since they don't have the mechanism, the system to transport water to the long distance, therefore they are limited to grow on the ground. Limited size bryophytes are generally small and low growing due to the absence of vascular tissue. Susceptibility to dry out. Since bryophytes lack a protective cuticle or complex structure to conserve water, they can dry out quickly in an environment where water is not readily available. That is susceptibility to dry out. So these bryophytes, they lack cuticle, and this cuticle is a structure that prevents excessive loss of water, and since they lack the cuticle, they easily loses water to the environment where there is not enough water, so they limit their distribution primarily moist habitats. So they cannot distribute to the other areas where there is not enough water. So they are limited to grow to the areas or moist habitat areas. Short-lived sporophyte. The sporophyte generation is short-lived and entirely depend on the gametophyte for nutrition. This limits the reproductive success and spread by bryophytes compared to seed-producing plants, which have more complex and independent reproductive structure. So, short-lived sporophytes, these sporophytes limit this type of plants to spread out the ecosystem. So example of bryophytes, as we had discussed earlier, we have the mosses. Mosses include the sphagnum moss, which play a critical role in peat bogs. Liverworts or Machentiophyta. These have a flattened thallus and they are often found in very wet environments. We have the hornworts or the Anthecoretophyta, named for their horn-like sporophytes that grow out of the gametophytes. So bryophytes are simple. Now, before we go to that, we can go through what we call the summary of the bryophytes features. You have the non-vascular. This is lack specialized transport system or the xylem phloem. We have the moisture dependent. That means that they cannot grow in areas where there is no moist, so lives in moist habitat for water absorption and reproduction. small in size, limited growth due to the absence of vascular tissues. We also have reproduces via spores, that is through what called the alternates between the dominant gametophytes and the dependent sporophytes stages. Ecological importance: water retention, soil formation, and air equality indicators. So bryophytes are simple yet essential plants that play important role in various ecosystems, especially in regulating moisture and contributing to early stages of ecological succession. Now, that marks the end of our lesson today on the first part of plants. Viewers, continue continue following up as the more discussion on plants is coming. Subscribe to be getting the updates from Theek TV for more exploration or more explore about the world or the class of science in Theek TV. Thank you very much.